Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show, where we talk about all components of business and how to utilize them for exponential growth. My name is Athin Cassiotis. I'm a serial entrepreneur, international speaker, results strategist, business coach, mentor, and consultant. Today, I have an awesome guest. She's a two-time Olympian, entrepreneur, executive coach, mentor, speaker, investor, and team builder for many of the biggest companies and brands in the world. She creates aha moments for teams and individuals, from senior leaders to young, ambitious professionals, to take their next big leap forward. Welcome, Lina Taylor, and thank you for being on my show.
Well, thank you, Athin. This is so nice to be here. I'm really excited about speaking to you.
Awesome. You're very welcome, and I'm so excited as well. I'm sure there's going to be huge amounts of value for everyone watching and listening today. So you're a very successful entrepreneur. So for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us about you and your journey.
It's interesting because when you are reading all those accolades, when you look up my name or when you basically look at a resume of a person, you see and you say, wow, she's just so successful. She's played in 2 Olympics, she's built businesses and has a very successful career. And that doesn't tell the full story now, does it? And so what I can share with you is that it didn't start that way. I was born in communist Bulgaria, and my life was marked by a lack of opportunities. We were restricted of traveling. There was a ceiling, that everybody could make a certain amount of money. My parents were not members of the Communist Party, and so their life, as a child, I witnessed their life was marked by a lot of struggle and honestly, a lack of opportunity to kind of define what they experience in life. And that is what paved the foundation of where I started. By the age of 16 in Bulgaria, I started seeing my parents' life start to repeat in my life, in the fact that opportunities were not just going to be given to me, but also they could be taken away. So what you don't know and what you can find when you Google me is that at 16, I was cut from my team and I was told that I don't have what it takes to make it at the highest level, right? And that was a devastating experience at the time for me. And I remember going home that night after practice and just thinking that the world is over, right? Any 16-year-old in my situation would probably think the same thing. I couldn't even tell my parents what happened. And so I just went to my room and cried and cried and cried. And the next morning when I woke up, I made a decision. And the decision that I made was that I would go back to my practice and I would take my spot in the lineup. And if the coach wanted to cut me now, of course, I would get humiliated in front of the whole team. But I had a realization during the night, and the realization came from asking myself some big questions, which was, why does this hurt so much? Why does it feel like my life is over? What does volleyball really mean to me? And the realization was that being on that team represented a gateway to the rest of my life. And I wasn't ready or willing to give it up like that. So I showed up at practice. I took my spot in the lineup. All of my teammates, of course, started whispering, why are you here? Why are you humiliating yourself? But the coach came and she stood in front of me and she saw the resolve that I had, that, I was willing to do that regardless of what I was told the day before. And she kept walking. She didn't say a word. And that was the moment that I woke up to something. I woke up to the fact that opportunities are not going to be given to me. In fact, they could be taken away. And if I want something, I will have to create it. And so that became kind of my superpower, right? I just realized that if I want something, I better work hard for it. By the end of that year, I became a starter on the team. We won the national championship. But the lesson there for me was that if I wanted something, I would have to create it. It's not just going to be given to me. And then the rest of my life was marked by that. Coming to the US, finding a way, despite the circumstances that my parents couldn't pay for my education, I figured out a way to get a scholarship at a university in America at a time that nobody else knew how to do that. And then, of course, telling everybody about it, a lot of people started doing the same thing. And another one of, wanting to play in the Olympics and doing that in a sport that I hadn't really played before. My sister and I started playing beach volleyball after we had graduated from college, and we had this big ambition to play in the Olympics. So we ended up figuring out a way how to qualify and play in the Sydney Olympics, which I see you're in Sydney. So what an amazing place to be. I just absolutely love the atmosphere there. And then we ended up playing in Athens and playing professionally for a few years. So from those experiences, I've asked myself the question, what are the components that are needed to be there for us to achieve some of those big, seemingly impossible dreams that we have in our lives? And then, of course, from many failed experiences that I had, I put together a sort of a framework of how to close that gap. When we have a big goal, when we want to achieve something, what are the steps that we need to take to achieve it? And I honestly believe that there's nothing that was exceptional about me to begin with. In fact, if you looked at my statistics on paper, just like the coach did, there was just nothing special about it. And it was these steps that I took that I believe that anybody is possible of. And that's the message that I share today with corporations and individuals and just people looking to advance their life to create a better life.
Yeah, amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. And, so amazing lessons and, when people are putting you down. And I think that one of the biggest things that came from that to me is about resilience, right? And that seems to be a big part about your success. It's like, I'm just going to keep going and things like that. So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit more about why resilience is so important in life and business?
Well, that's what we learn from sport. So in sport, the way that you get better is by doing things that feel uncomfortable. So we get trained at a very young age to know that it's okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, that is the way to get yourself better. So when your muscles hurt from a workout, this is actually how you make your muscles become stronger. So this is the lesson that we kind of have to take from sport and the things that it's teaching us, and then apply it to everyday situations in life. But there's something else there too, because I've learned along the way that you don't control every outcome. And some of the best outcomes that I've had is when I started with acceptance, accepting the fact that I don't control every situation. Whenever I had resistance to what was happening in the world around me, this is when I struggled the most. And resistance comes from expectations, as we know, right? Whenever you get good at something, whenever you get good at sports or your business, or you think that you have all these customers and clients, and then all of a sudden somebody's not responding. You have these expectations, oh, why aren't they working with me? Or why would the coach cut me? Now, there were two girls cut that day, me and somebody else. And, the other person said, oh, that's not fair. How can they cut me? I don't want to be on that team. But in that moment, because I was so desperate to have my life the way that I wanted it, I was forced to and kind of stumbled upon this truth that I have discovered over and over and over again through many different experiences. Acceptance lays the foundation to resilience. So if you can accept the fact that you're not in control of every outcome, right? You're a co-creator. You don't control everything. There are other people, there are other intentions, there are other things in the world that also want to be there. So if you can start with that understanding and with that truth, really, honestly, but to remember it in times of trouble. And I have trouble remembering it sometimes. I'm not immune to it. Once you learn it, it doesn't mean that you know it for life. It's a daily practice. Acceptance is a daily practice. It requires humility, right? Humility. It's humility. It's something that you daily have to remind yourself, I don't control everything. Everybody is free to respond the way that they will. And then from there, we can start looking at the second step of building resilience, which is really taking responsibility. Now that you accept that you don't control everything, what is your part? What was my part in creating that situation with the coach? Is there something I could have done differently? Is there something that I could do differently in the future? Now that requires honesty. We have to be honest with ourselves, right? We have to be honest at the times that we don't get up and we don't do the workout, and we maybe take the easy route, and maybe we just take a day off that we just didn't feel like it, or whatever it may be. And those are fine too. But being honest with ourselves requires us to take responsibility for the part that we play in this whole equation. There's 3 more steps, but I'll take a little break here and see if that's resonating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, love it. Really powerful. And I love how you've broken down, the initial part with acceptance and those other steps there. And, as we build on this, I know also, as part of this, you have like a 5-step process, right? With your Close the Gap leadership training that you do. So do you can share more on that, or maybe share just, I guess, the initial overview of what that is and what are these different levels to ensure that we can really close that gap?
Yeah. So a lot of times when we have big goals and big ambitions, there is that gap that we talk about between where we are right now and where we want to be. Imagine the scene. I was sitting on my couch, having graduated from college with a degree in biology, started working in the biotech industry, working full-time. And on the weekend, I was watching the Olympics on TV. And all of a sudden, beach volleyball came on as an Olympic sport. It was the first time that it was an Olympic sport. And I thought, wow, this is an amazing game. What if I could play beach volleyball in the Olympics? I knew there was no way once I came to college in the US that I would go back and join the national team in Bulgaria. But I thought, this new sport, beach volleyball, I just need one more person to play. And I asked my sisters to come and try it out with me. But you can imagine where I was at the time, just sitting on my couch, and then all of a sudden wanting to play at the highest level at the Olympics. Quite a bit of a gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. In the next 4 years, I figured out a way to make it happen through many difficulties, not having any funding from anywhere because we weren't any good, honestly, to begin with. And then not having coaching, having to coach ourselves, having to work full time while saving money to travel, and just all the different sacrifices. There was a big dream about playing in the Olympics. There was a vision. But I realized after some tough experiences that the road is not guaranteed. The success is not guaranteed. So I needed something else, not just the vision. And what I realized is that the reason behind the vision is just as, if not more important. And that is the driving vehicle that gives us the energy to persevere through some of the obstacles that we inevitably meet along the way. It's not like when I decided to play in the Olympics, the red carpet just rolled open. It's like, come on, play at the Olympics. This is how you do it. No, in fact, the bigger the thing that you try to do, the more obstacles you're going to run into. So in that process, when we talk about closing the gap, I use the word close as an acronym. And the C stands for clarity, having that vision, knowing what it is that you want to create. Maybe you have a vision of creating a better life, just like I did. Maybe you have a vision of, buying a house or helping your parents retire or whatever it may be, the vision. Maybe you want to help your kids better life than you do. So the thing that you have to start with is the vision. And then you have to ask yourself that question, just like I had to, is why is that important to you, right? What does it really mean? What does it really mean? Who are the people that believe in you? Who are the people that depend on you in that whole situation? So those big questions become the motivating factor, the reason why. And then that, you'll see how that plays a critical role in how we overcome the obstacles. So the second step in the process, the L, stands for having laser sharp focus. And this is all about the strategy. Now, how do we align that intention that we created with the vision with our attention, which is how we spend the day, what we do on a daily basis? And that has to do with really figuring out what are your distractions and eliminating those, being committed to looking at what you can control. Now, this is where we talk about focus, right? Laser sharp focus. Focus is the organizing force. in a way that we don't control all the outcomes that come, but there is only one thing that we control fully in this world, which is where we place our focus. And so being able to ask ourselves the question, what is something I can do right now that will take me closer in the direction that I want to go? That is taking responsibility. That's not waiting for someone to come and discover you, or that is not waiting for someone to come and offer a grand gesture of some kind. You know, that is taking responsibility, putting the ball in your hands and asking, what is something you can do right now in this moment that will take you just one step closer in that direction? So that takes us to step number 3, which is when we talk about how do we overcome the inevitable obstacles that we meet along the way. And this is where the role of knowing why something is important to you plays a crucial role. This is where we talk about how do we build resilience. This is where I started explaining a little bit about the resilience process, starting with acceptance, taking responsibility, then reframing whatever the obstacle is in front of us by asking those bigger questions. Now, the interesting part about this is that neuroscience is now discovering that what happens in our brains, right? When we ask those big questions, what does this really mean? Now, things happen, but we get to assign meaning to them. So to one person, something can mean something, and then to me, it could mean something completely different. This is where we talk about what is your true north? What is important to you? Why do you want to do this? And that reframing, which requires that centering, now gives you the courage. Just like I did in that moment when the coach cut me and I decided, go back to practice. Okay, you can be humiliated, but go back to practice. You know, stand up for what you believe in. Take your spot in the lineup. It takes courage to do that. And then from there, are you willing to do what it takes? The last step in that resilience process is to be willing to recommit to what it takes, right? So we talked about, let me backtrack, clarity, the first step in closing the gap, laser sharp focus, which is all about the strategy, taking the ball in your hand and taking responsibility for what you want to create, overcoming those obstacles by reframing, by asking the bigger questions. And now, how do you shift? How do you shift for growth from each and every situation? In sports, agility is a very important skill. How can you be in that agile space? So there's 3 ways to respond to any situation. Number 1, persevere. That's what I did in that situation, right? Based on how you answer that big question, what's important to you? What does it really mean? You decide that you want to stay the course, but not just that. Are you willing to now make yourself invaluable? Invaluable. If you're serving clients, how can you add more value to what you're doing? How can you add more services? How can you add more to what you're doing so that, you know, they can really connect with that? Second way to respond is to pivot, make a change. Make a change. You realize, you know, this is really not working for me. This is more important. That's what I did when I said, I'm not, you know, I'm going to get my education now. This is how I'm going to create this better life that I want. And the third way to respond, there is a wonderful Turkish proverb that says, no matter how far you've gone down the wrong road, you need to turn around. So that's the third way to respond, is just to let go of something. We all have experienced that, right? Relationships, businesses, things that we started that didn't work out. Once you align your values, what matters most to you, you realize, you know, it's time to let go. And there's always time for that. So that's kind of like the framework. If you can see, there's a little pattern to these steps. The first one, the clarity, you look at the big picture. What do I want to create? Why is that important to me? The second one, laser sharp focus, it's really about the strategy. What can I do? Then you hit a wall, you hit an obstacle. You take a step back, you look at the big picture again. What's important to me? Why is this important to me? And then you decide, okay, do I persevere? Do I change direction? Do I let go? So that's a mindset. The E stands for how do we encode this kind of mindset into everything that we do? And there's a million different tools that we can put in that last step.
Yeah, awesome. What a lovely share. And I love the way You broke it down so powerfully in multiple different ways there. So thank you for that. And let's get into leadership now, because I know you're big on leadership. You work with a lot of the biggest companies and brands and things there. So it's becoming more and more important in business, right? Whether you're an executive, whether you're the entrepreneur that's obviously leading your own business, especially, then, so in your eyes, how do we become better leaders?
Oh, this is such a great question. Thank you for asking this, because I think all of us have these leadership qualities inside of us. If we take the time and really that practice of looking inwardly, of realizing what is really important to us. And just like, I explain a lot of the principles that I teach through the stories, through the experiences that I've been through. But all of us have these stories. If I ask you, Athin, you have something that you've overcome, you've had an experience in your life when things were really, really difficult. And how did you do it? How did you go through that? What was the thing that you did? So just like I did in that moment of realizing that I have to take my life in my hands. It's not just going to be given to me, right? In fact, other people can try to take it away. So that became my superpower. But what is your superpower? Every one of us has a superpower. I firmly believe that we have the resources within ourselves to be amazing leaders. And that becomes our leadership story. It becomes our leadership quality. This is how we lead the people around us. Of course, you can learn a lot of things, and self-development and taking courses and taking leadership classes is really, really important. But I believe that that element that makes you special as a leader lies within yourself. So one of the exercises that I like to do with leaders is really get in touch with that story of who you are. Where did you come from? Maybe where did your parents come from, or your grandparents, or what happened along the way? You are here in a very special way to contribute to the world. And so it's great that if we can repeat somebody else's steps, but what's even better is if we can take what we've learned along the way and then empower ourselves to do even more. So what I do today is 100% related to asking myself the question, how can I tell a better story? So this is how my whole path in leadership development and in coaching and in teaching people how to do that for themselves. It started with simply asking myself, how do I tell a better story? And then in that practice, trying to develop that practice, I said, well, what better story to tell than my own? Because that's the story that I know the best. And so that started putting me in touch with all of these qualities that I'm describing to you. So all of the results, all of the accolades that you see, the amazing companies that I've had the fortune of working with, that all came as a result of me asking myself that simple question. And so if there's something that I can offer here in terms of leadership, and what will make each and every person that's listening to this unique, is get in touch with that story, get in touch with that superpower that you have inside yourself that nobody else has. Now, in marketing, sometimes they call that, your unique value proposition. Right? What is this unique thing that you and only you can offer to the world?
Yeah, love that. Really powerful. I love that take on it, because it's a great question, and what a great answer. That how to look at it differently and use our experiences and what we've done to have that leadership style and that trait of us to really make a difference. So really love that. Thank you, Lina. So now, many people can doubt us on our journey. I know obviously in your story, it was, the coach at the time, which you overcome. But, I think, on this entrepreneurial journey, especially, it happens a lot. Like, in Australia, for example, there's this thing called the tall poppy syndrome, where they just want to kick you down if you succeed. And a lot of countries, are like this, depending on where you are in the world. So, and I think whether it's family, whether it's friends, people in area that, people would say that you can't do something, right? So what do you say to that? If how do we ensure we still succeed when everyone, potentially, depending on where we are at in our journey, are telling us, oh, you can't do that, or you can't do this? What can we do to ensure that we keep moving forward at all of those instances?
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of my life, right? It's a hard place to be because of two things. Number one, sometimes the people that are closest to you are the people that you want to be excited for you. And when you're excited, you want the people to support that excitement. What happens if they don't? Well, that's happened to me many, many times. When I was in Bulgaria, thinking about, dreaming about really, wanting to come to the US, wanting to get my education, I knew my parents couldn't pay for my education. So when I shared that dream with my friends, what they did is just simply laugh in my face and say, keep dreaming, that will never happen. We had never known anyone that did it. And we knew that there was no way, that my parents can have the money to pay for my education. And yet, when we're young, when we're children, there's something inside of us that refuses to be defined by these circumstances, right? And so I hadn't lost that when I started writing to a pen pal at the time. We didn't have the internet yet. And I started writing these letters just to practice my English. And so I shared my dream, which my friends would laugh at, but I shared it in a letter to this pen pal. And I said very simply, my dream is to go to America. I want to get my education there. I want to create a better life. My parents, I know they don't have the ability to send me, but I believe there is a way. And so she sent me a letter back. She was from Cyprus, by the way. She sent me a letter back and she said, well, did you know that in America, there's such a thing as an athletic scholarship? If you're really good in a sport, the university will pay for your education. And I said, wow, I mean, I didn't have that information. So what did I do? I started writing letters to American universities, handwritten letters, by the way, handwritten. So all my letters, as you can imagine, ended up in general admissions. Nobody responded. All I got back actually in response were these beautiful brochures that the universities will send you, and they'll say, by the way, $100,000 price tag. So it became very frustrating that I wasn't getting where I wanted to be. But that pen pal, we kept corresponding. I kept telling her about, how things are going, that I'm learning English, that I really want to make this happen. And one day she sent me a letter back and she said, look at what I found in the trash. So she was working at the Volleyball Federation in Cyprus at the time. And on her way out one day, literally something caught her eye and she looked in the trash, pulled out this crumbled up piece of paper, and that turned out to be a recruiting letter from the volleyball coach at the University of Idaho. Now, I had no idea where the University of Idaho was, but I knew it was in America. So I wrote him back as fast as I could. I had to take a lot of exams, passed all of that, and I ended up becoming the first athlete from communist Bulgaria at the time to get a scholarship and get my education in the US. Now, this coach at the University of Idaho, he was doing the same thing that I was doing, but on the other side. He was trying to recruit players to come to his university. All of his letters ended up in the trash, just like that one, because nobody wanted to give up their players. And it was only because I wrote my dream down in a letter and I shared it with someone. And that opened the gates. Now there were hundreds and hundreds of other athletes that came from Bulgaria and did the same thing and transformed their lives in the same way that I've been able to transform mine. So here's what I have to tell you. There will be people around you all the time that will doubt and kind of try to dampen your excitement about something. And what you have to do is really share with someone that really has no judgment about your dream, someone that can create the opening of you sharing freely. And this is a gift that we can offer to others too. Now think about how many times do you hear something in your life. I had this presentation for Nike one time, and I was telling them this story. And it was, a senior level group. And after my presentations, I always ask the question, what's something that resonated with you that you think you can put into practice right away? And I never would have expected this answer, but the senior executive and one of the biggest, sports athletic companies in the world said to me, I realized from your story how I dampened the enthusiasm of the people around me sometimes, by not supporting their dreams, thinking that like my kids or, my friends that, have these crazy ideas or big dreams. And I think I'm going to do different. I'm going to do different. And, I never intended for that to be the message. That was just something that that person heard at that time, but it's a really important message for all of us.
Yeah, amazing story there. And I loved, how much of an impact that can have in different ways and how we can continue to move forward. And let's touch on coaching and mentoring now. Obviously, you have had many coaches with, your Olympic career. And then, I'm assuming as well, going forward on that, coaches in life and business and things as well. So how important, and you are obviously an executive coach to yourself now. So how important has coaching, mentoring been in your life and important for everybody so they can grow as well?
Yeah, I mean, from sports, again, this is kind of the worlds that I bridge in my work. At that level, if you want to play at the highest level, if you want to be in the elite, no matter what you're doing, the opportunity to work with someone that has your best interest at heart, that will create that open space that we just talked about, without a judgment, but with empathy and support, and also offer skills and offer ideas. Now, there has to be a level of trust, right, with the coach that you choose. And if you're a coach, you have to be able to create that level of trust around you. And that happens when you focus on the value, that you offer, when you focus on being vulnerable, but also when you focus on how can we work together here? What is something bigger that we can create that's bigger than ourselves in this whole equation? So that's really the gift of coaching for me, is that you create in the process something bigger than you ever realized was possible, because you have that trust, that underlying trust, and then you have the capacity to think bigger even. I have to tell you something. So this is, if you ask me, what is something, like I was playing a game in the Olympics. So this is at the Athens Olympics, and we're playing against the #1 team in the world, and we're winning. And we were winning. We won the first set. In the second set, they started catching up to us. We ended up eventually losing the game. And I had to sit there and ask myself the question, why did this happen? Like, we were actually winning this game. So what broke down here? And it wasn't easy, but I had the realization that I didn't set my goals high enough. As high as I thought that I was dreaming, from sitting on my couch to playing in the Olympics, which by any stretch of the imagination was a big dream, I wasn't dreaming big enough. So having a coach that really can trust in you and can really help you allow yourself to dream even bigger, I think is really, really important along the way. And I experience that in my daily life, even when right now, when I have the benefit of being coached by someone, it's really easy to cut through these limitations that we set for ourselves on a daily basis. I'm not immune to limitations. I'm not immune to anxiety. Just because I've played in the Olympics, it doesn't mean that I have everything figured out. For my work, for my business, for myself, I need that, this outside perspective. It really helps me. It gives me a shortcut, if you will. I mean, I may stumble and try to figure it out all myself, but really, at the end of the day, a coach is a shortcut.
Yeah, I love it. So true. I completely agree with that. And, that's obviously helped me to get to me where I am. And I'm sure with you in all areas in Olympics and business and life and everything. So love it. Really powerful. So I've worked with, a few big brands myself, but you especially have worked with ridiculous amounts of the biggest companies and brands in the world. That you say a lot of these names, everybody will know them, which is amazing. Now, I think for everyone, it'd be nice to hear, what are some things that we can do to get our foot in the door, to some of these big brands?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I ask myself that question all the time too. And it really has to do with the value that you offer, continuing to improve that, continuing to refine that. It has to do with, who are the people that you surround yourself with? Being willing, when I started my speaking career, my coaching career, there were times when there was nobody in my presentations, and I would do it for one person. Now, a lot of my friends who had already been used to a certain amount of success were not willing to do that work. And it's like, I don't want to spend an hour for $20 just talking to one person. I was willing to do that because every single chance that I had to present what I had to offer was, for me, it was practice. It was being able to refine. What is the value that you offer? How does it work better? Being open to feedback. This is one of the biggest things. Being open to feedback and actively seeking it out so that you can improve what you do. But also, be willing to give and to be there. And that's not too long ago that I do that. And I still do that. I get asked by nonprofit organizations to, deliver a speech or, create an experience for them. And if their goals align with what are my goals in life, I will do it. So I think the willingness has to be there. It's probably one of the biggest things. And then being able to accept feedback. Sometimes it's really hard to hear it. And I'm one of those people that, having struggled with confidence my whole life, it was really difficult to hear feedback that wasn't basically praise. But, praise is great, but it's not really what you need in order to develop that offering. So having someone to trust and ask them for feedback, it's another way to get forward.
Yeah, love that. Really powerful. And, you touched on it there. Speaking is a skill, right? That I think must all continue to improve, to be better at communicators, to present our ideas. So, you're an amazing speaker. I could see how, you're speaking today, and obviously you do that well. You've been doing it for many years now. So what tips can you give us to be better speakers?
Here's something. So I had to do that with volleyball too, because imagine a little girl that felt awkward in her body, had all kinds of body image issues, and growing out of that and being able to put myself in a situation where now thousands of people are looking at me in my bathing suit. It's quite a journey right there, right? A transformation. So how did I do that? I used the same kind of technique that I used in sports as in speaking, because I'm self-conscious, just like all of us are. And I don't think I'm perfect. And I mess up the words that I say. English is my second language, right? So I sometimes mispronounce things. And so I remember being terrified when I first came to the United States of speaking to a cashier at a store, because I would say something wrong. It's very natural to be afraid in any situation and at any age. And so one of the ways that I've learned to overcome that is by, again, placing my focus on something else aside of myself. So thinking about, who is the person that I'm talking to? Right now, I'm talking to you. I'm not thinking about me or what I say right or what I say wrong. I'm thinking about, what are you going to hear? Is that going to be empowering to you? So in the moment of speaking, I'm nervous before every presentation because I'm in my body, I'm in myself, I'm thinking about, am I going to do it right? Creating a ritual to get in a space where you're not thinking about yourself, but you channel and focus all of your energy just on the people that you're speaking with. This happens very naturally in conversations that we have with friends, right? We're not thinking about, am I saying this right? Or am I saying it wrong? No, we're just talking, right? Because we're thinking about, subconsciously, we're thinking about the value that we're creating in the situation. So it's the same thing with speaking. And the way that I found is to enter that space through some anchoring rituals before each and every presentation that I do. And they're very simple. You know, it could be just like looking in the mirror and the way that I do my hair, or listening to a certain song that kind of puts me in a good mood, in a good presence, being present. And then when I begin the presentation, I really focus on the eyes of the people that are there. So I look at the eyes and I start getting curious. So curiosity is one of the big tools that I try to teach and that I try to remind people. It's like having that curiosity, like, what do you want to hear? What's interesting to you? Now that immediately changes my focus on being self-conscious about me, and is this in the right place or is it in the wrong place? In just creating a moment, creating an experience, being present in what's happening and being curious about you. What do you want to hear? And that's, you know, as simple as that. I can explain it. And in the game, like when we're playing sports, I would focus on the opponent. Now, in speaking, my audience is not an opponent. You know, we're actually trying to co-create something together. So I like to focus on their eyes. I like to get curious about why are they here? What do they want to hear? What's important to them? What's important to them? So that's a simple question. What's important to you? You know, if you can focus on that, it immediately takes you out of that self-reflective mode into trying to create something, co-create something with the people that you're with.
Yeah, love that. Amazing things there. And it's been an amazing interview today with you, Lina. And as we're wrapping up now, what one key piece of advice would you give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Yeah, it's great. I ask that question a lot. And one of the answers that I get back most frequently is how important it is to write down our goals, our visions, make a plan, write it down, share it with someone that you trust, right? And then really, what is something that you can do to take you just one step closer in the direction that you want to go? It's really empowering when you focus on what you can do and not think about the million things that you can't do and that are dependent upon other people.
Yeah, love that. So true. We connected through our networks where I learned about your awesome journey from being a two-time beach volleyball Olympian to being an executive coach, team builder, speaker. You know, you've worked with many of the biggest companies and brands to improve leadership, you know, team building and resilience. You're an amazing woman. I'm sure everyone will agree, and I'm sure you will continue to help everyone grow into their true potential. I'm very grateful that we connected, and I look forward to working with you in the future. So how can people find you, get in contact with you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. Best way to get a hold of me is just to look up linataylor.com. And then I love meeting new people on social media, LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. My handle is @LinaTaylorINT. So that really is the best way to get a hold of me. Thank you for this opportunity.
You're very welcome, and definitely check out Lina, everyone. She's amazing, as we're sure we all confirm from today. So, and thank you everyone for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube as Athin Cassiotis, or visit my website, athincassiotis.com. I completely agree with you, or do I? The only way we know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.